Okay, so I'm Sean Licata. I'm from VIZIYA, one of the sponsors of the event. If you have not heard about VIZIYA, I'll give you a little background, but first I'll just talk about the presentation we're going to give. At VIZIYA, we sell software, and we see the world is at a really interesting place right now with all kinds of things you can do in your maintenance system with mobile and IoT and predictive maintenance and all sorts of technologies that are really coming to the forefront. And we see all of them really taking us toward the asset, where an asset-based process, really understanding how your assets work, is the way, not that maintenance doesn't do it today, but I think the processes and the systems will evolve even more toward a more asset-based focused solution. VIZIYA's been around for, since 2006. We have over 850 sites around the world, lots of users, lots of customers. Our flagship product is our scheduler, but we have several other products as well. So this is just to let you know, hopefully, that we've talked to lots of customers like you. My role at VIZIYA is I'm the VP of Business Development, which really means I get to work with customers as they build their relationship with VIZIYA. Right? So I've learned a lot over my 10 years at VIZIYA about what people do in the field, what they need, and how solutions map to their issues. And this is my last About VIZIYA slide, so bear with me. Right? We have a variety of products that sit on top of SAP PM. We don't compete with SAP. What we want to do is produce products that enhance SAP. Right? We're not a consulting company. These are out-of-the-box products. We do implement them, but there's not much implementation. They're out-of-the-box solutions. It's really just get it working and then some training activities. Right? Scheduling, as I said, mobile, budgeting, warranty, IoT, analytics. Did I miss anything? 6 products. And always introducing more. We love to hear from customers and things they need. Our goal is all these products should work together and complement SAP. It should make your system and solution better than it is today. Okay. Does that make sense? That's who VIZIYA is. That's what we do. Now I want to talk a little bit about some of the lessons we've learned over time as we've worked with customers. The first slide, not particularly deep, but it's an important message. Have you heard the saying, profit is the small difference between two very large numbers? Right? And nowhere more is that true than in maintenance. You see huge expenses keeping equipment maintained. If you can save an asset and prevent it from being buying a new asset and extend its life a little while longer, you can save a ton of money. So maintenance has a real ability to impact that second dollar figure, both negatively and positively. Right? Good maintenance really impacts your profitability. Got a customer of ours who's a pipeline company, Enterprise Products, you may know them. Pipeline company, what do? They go out and really borrow a bunch of money, build a pipeline, and then they maintain that pipeline. 70 to 80% of their operating expenses go to maintaining the pipeline. You better believe for a pipeline company, maintenance is important. And I would say that every one of you sitting in the room have the same thing, where it may not be 80%, but a large portion of your operating expenses go to maintaining your equipment. Now, there's really 2 areas that companies like to focus on to save money. My favorite, maintenance, and then my least favorite is production. I'm a maintenance guy. Who here is production? Apologies, in advance. Right? In my mind, production costs are dictated by the laws of physics. Right? There's only so much you can do. Right? It depends on if it's a mining company, what the quality of the ore. An oil and gas company, where is the oil? How much does it cost to get out of the ground? If you're a telco or a water company, the costs are just what the costs are. They're dictated by the laws of physics. And look at the money that companies spend in order to make improvements, right? Rio Tinto is a good example. They were able to get the cost of extracting ore down to a really critical level and invested $400 million in extending their plant. Saudi Aramco, $10 billion in expanding production. Toyota, right? These are huge multi-$100 million investments in production. Well, I think that on the maintenance side, there's huge opportunity for savings. And I don't see a lot of headlines that says, $300 million invested in improving maintenance process. So who of you here in maintenance feel like your executives treat you guys with the same priorities they treat the production side? Right? No, exactly. It's hard to convince the world that maintenance is important, but it is in fact. Right? Here's some stats. The nice one there is from mining.com, or mining company. 20 to 40% of all operating costs are maintenance. As I said, production is dictated by the laws of physics. Maintenance is actually not. You have a ton of decisions to make. What assets do you work on? Who works on them? What assets do you replace? What assets do you extend? Your life in maintenance is one big decision. And you have the ability to make good decisions and make bad decisions. You have good processes and bad processes. These things dramatically impact the profitability of your company. The world agrees. You look at the investments that are happening in the maintenance world. From 2015, $3.25 billion invested in maintenance software and processes to more than double in 2022. Right? What is all this saying? Maintenance is important. It's critical to your company's success. It's critical to get right. Now, it takes a team. Right? I know that it's not always easy to succeed in the maintenance world. You have challenges. You have executives who are indiscriminately cutting your budget. You have not necessarily the right support that you need. They'll tell you, oh, sure, go ahead, but then when push comes to shove, they don't really support it. Or worse, poor priorities. You've got executives who are focused on production things instead of maintenance things, which are the most important. And of course, on the maintenance staff side, we're all guilty. We have inertia, right? We're doing things the way we're doing them, and we're not necessarily there to change. But the fact of the matter is, we're all here to make where we are better next year than it was this year. Right? We have to be enthusiastic for new, and we have to, stick with things, because it's not easy. Change management in a maintenance organization is very difficult. Some of my products are very easy to use, but deployment is a tricky thing. Right? It isn't just simply installing it ready to go and here you are. It really takes a lot of change management, organizational management to deploy products. And what a world you live in, right? Machine learning, IoT, demographics, young kids coming that are very computer savvy. This is a real predictive maintenance. All these things are happening today, and they are changing the way maintenance is done. My belief is 5 years from now, if you do it right, you will not recognize your maintenance organization. It's nothing but opportunity, right? May you live in interesting times. Well, you have the opportunity here to transform your maintenance organization. An interesting little side note, one of our customers is Potash, now Nutriem, right? Potash Agrim merged and formed a company called Nutriem. We were deploying an IoT product with them, and IoT, what we do is we take the sensor data and help generate a downstream work order flow process. We had the reliability engineers and the maintenance people in the room at the same time talking about how we were doing. And guess what? They were all shaking each other's hands. Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Fred. I'm Bill. You tend to, as a vendor, think all customers know one another. But my God, the reliability and maintenance guys, they're not the same teams. Now, is that a common occurrence? Is that the way that it's, I heard one comment. Is that the way it works for you? Yeah, well, as the world is changing more toward a focus on assets, this silo world can't continue. More software vendors, you look at Martin's excellent presentation of all the things that he's doing, it allows you to cross these borders and do really nice things together. You cannot exist as separate organizations and see the benefits that you need. Another query, how many of you use mobile in their maintenance workflow? Actually, it's pretty good, 5, 6, 7. Little study, 2017, 80% of the companies out there don't use mobile. Mobile's mature technology, right? 5, 10 years ago, it might have been a science project. Today, there's a ton of ways to deploy mobile. A lot of good vendors, a lot of really good solutions. But the adoption is still light. It's changing, right? But it's light. Mobile has, in many ways, can impact your organization more than anything, right? You've got guys that are working on paper, all of a sudden go to a mobile device, and it really transforms the way you do things. Nice chart that Hasso Plattner presented at SAP Sapphire, right? And the message really was, if you look at SAP as the fundamentals for your operations, it isn't all you need. You need things surrounding SAP. And look, even third parties have a place in your ERP system. We're an SAP partner, as are the other SAP partners that are here sponsoring. Because what we try to do is create an ecosystem where you really cannot survive with you and SAP alone. There are solutions that the partners provide that you can't get any other place, right? And there's a place for us, because VIZIYA is one of the larger partners. We're 70 people, but that's still a lot less than SAP. We tend to be a lot more nimble, right? If you have a problem, we can solve it quickly. There's a role for the partners in the ecosystem. Okay, I'm done my sort of intro commercial, but let me take stock, right? Asset management, let's all agree it's important, yes? Let's all agree that it's a little bit disconnected, not as much mobile as we'd like. And let's also agree that asset management is not just a series of problems, but rather an end-to-end process that gets you where you need to be. I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. Okay, so firstly, you all want to make your maintenance organization better today or tomorrow than it was yesterday. And from an executive point of view, what's that mean? Save money, right? I always say there are 3 ways to save money in maintenance. What's the first way? Stop doing maintenance. Right? You laugh, but it happens, right? You get a CEO who wants to have a good quarter. Guess what? Stop doing maintenance. And you know what? It actually works. You save a ton of money if you stop doing maintenance. Sometimes things break, but not as often. You stop doing it for 2 quarters. Well, some more things break, but you still save money. What happens eventually, though, of course, is it catches you, where you stop doing maintenance and things just break down and you have chaos, right? But if you're an executive looking for your quarterly bonus, don't necessarily plan to be in an organization 2 or 3 years from now, that might be what you suggest, right? It's our job at maintenance to avoid those decisions, right? And so maybe you get a more enlightened executive team, and option number 2, okay, indiscriminate spending cuts. They may not tell you to stop spending altogether. Nobody tells you that. But they might say, cut 10%. Who here has had their maintenance budget cut by a flat percentage? No, 1, 2, no, 3, 4, okay. It's common, right? Well, that's another way to do it. Of course, it's the wrong way to do it because how do you know? Sometimes you can work and maintain things and it actually is a good idea, right? Some things you don't have a choice. Something breaks, you got to fix it. It's not always possible to just take 5% off your maintenance budget. Well, what's the right answer? The right answer is number 3. Strategically invest in good maintenance, right? That might actually mean spending money, right? I sell things to customers all the time. And, it's my perspective, of course, but it helps them save money. The paybacks are 2, 3, 7 months, 10 months, depending on the project, what we do. It saves money. You strategically invest in good things, get your scheduling right, get your IoT solution in. You can actually improve your maintenance spend. Maintain an asset better, don't have to replace it so soon. Right? Now, certainly there's a place to save money in maintenance, but you also have to strategically invest and do the right thing. Nice quote from Rob Carpio, VP at Alcoa. He felt like 20 to 40% of their maintenance is a controllable cost. Think about it, Alcoa is a big company, 20, 30 plants around the world. This is, they're talking billions of dollars here, is controllable. Right? And I'm sure you have similar things where you can make decisions on what you do and when you do it. Okay, so at VIZIYA, I said we have several products. I'm only going to focus right now on the scheduling. But we do have others, and all of them really circle around trying to take you on a maintenance journey from where you are today to where you need to be. Right? We talked about IoT a little bit, right? Being able to tie a sensor that's on a piece of equipment that's telling you, I've got a bearing that's getting hot, creating a work order and actually changing that hot bearing, and maybe it's a new thing, it's under warranty, get a warranty claim. What we do is try to build products that surround SAP and add functionality where there may not be. Scheduling is our flagship product. We've had that product for the longest. We've had it in the market since 2007. We're on release 8, I think, of Scheduler. So we've got a lot of functionality, a lot of background on Scheduler. So I thought I'd spend a little time talking to you about lessons we've learned as we've talked to customers and deployed Scheduler around the world. I'm not going to do a product pitch, don't worry. I'm going to hopefully talk about some things that give you some ideas when you're thinking about scheduling. Why scheduling? You saw Martin's chart, it's actually the same data, right? Top thing at the 2018 SAP-centric focus group, 80.88% of people cited planning and scheduling as their top concern. How's that work from the room? Who here has a planning and scheduling process that is perfect and does not need to be improved? Yeah. Who here needs to work on their planning and scheduling process? Yeah, it's what could be more important than what do you work on, when do you work on it, and who does it? Right? Planning and scheduling in many ways is the center of your maintenance process. Right? If you want to get control and make improvements, look at how you schedule the work. Right? It's a very powerful way to transform your organization. A nice little study from Allied Reliability, a reliability partner. And they looked at, I don't know if you can read this, apologies if it's a bit of an eye chart. They looked at a typical craftsperson day and looked at what they do on an average day. Right? The most shocking one, of course, is 29% of their time is maintenance time, actually turning a wrench and doing something productive. 3% of meetings, 9% waiting assignments. Okay, breaks and lunch, I get it. Cleanup 6%. Look at this one. Material search tool, 14%, right? There's some partners here who do great jobs of helping you find the material, but a large part of their day just going, working on the system, trying to find the right part when something's broken. Training, lockout, tagout reports. It's an amazingly frenetic and exciting day for the craftspeople. And, look at the chance. If you can actually make this 29% maintenance time improve, you've got a lot of savings. Right? So another quote from Doc Palmer. Doc Palmer, in many ways, is the godfather of planning and scheduling, wrote the book. And what he says is, look, an 8-hour day, there's a certain amount of time that you have to have lunches and breaks and whatever. On an 8-hour day, the best you can possibly do is 6.5 hours for a maintenance guy. Right? If you have no planning and scheduling, what he found is roughly, same as the last chart actually, 2.5 hours of your day is spent turning a wrench. Simply implementing a basic planning and scheduling process gets you up to around 4.5 hours. 2.5 hours to 4.5, you almost double the amount of time, the amount of work that you do on a per craftsman basis. Imagine doing that business case, right? All of a sudden your maintenance team gets twice as much done because you put a planning and scheduling process in. That's not even an ideal planning and scheduling process. It gets up to 6.5. Just having a basic process doubles the work. These are huge savings and huge opportunities. Now also, it's tempting to look at your business from a planning and scheduling point of view as your employees drive the profit. Let's fully utilize our people and make sure that the schedule is a good one. And the right answer is it's more than just your employees, right? Well, your assets are also important. Let's make sure your assets are properly maintained in the context of full utilization. Scheduling is more than just optimizing resources. That's an interesting challenge, but if that's all you're doing, you don't really need an advanced scheduling product. You just need to make sure you're fully utilized. It's really about getting the right people at the right time doing the right work. I should say that when we often talk to customers and show them our product, the first thing they do is say, well, show us how you change date. And of course we show them, but that's easy. You just click and drag and change the date. You can go in SAP and change a date pretty easily too. If what you need is if you need a scheduling product and all you want to do is change dates, you don't actually need a scheduling product. Scheduling is a lot more than changing dates. It's about having a good process that allows your organization to run the way it needs to run. So here's some things to talk about from the scheduling process. First step in a good scheduling process is, are your work orders properly planned? Do they all have descriptions? Are there steps? Are the tasks described? Do they have resources assigned? If your work orders are not properly set up, I see I'm creating this feeling familiar. If your work orders are not properly set up, then don't schedule them. A good scheduling solution first works on your backlog to weed out the issues, pushes back to the planners and say, hey, there's something wrong here, I got a work order, but there's no hours on it. Second thing you have to do is find the high value work, right? What are the critical assets? What are the high priority work orders? We have customers that have 1 million work orders in their backlog. Chevron, BP, they have huge backlogs. You don't just pick any of them, you pick the important ones, right? Who here has a way to rank their work orders and the assets in terms of priority? Excellent, right? That's a critical step in the scheduling process. Okay, then you got to schedule the task, because now that you know what's important and the work orders are ready. What's that? No, okay, sorry. Oh, okay, so there's the wrong question. I love this maintenance industry. It's great. Good point. So you've got a proper planning work orders. You got a bit of a priority process, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Then you schedule them. You figure out who the work is going to go to, and then really when you're done, you're not really done. You execute the task and then measure it at the end. God forbid, you complete your work orders. How many people have work orders in the system that are maybe done but not technically complete, right? It's being able to follow that feedback loop is really important. Okay, asset criticality, a little mini commercial on asset criticality. So some of you have an asset criticality process. Who actually uses it? I caught you that time, right? Yeah. Asset criticality, there is no more powerful thing in maintenance than asset criticality. But let's just first talk about what it is, right? It's simply a ranking of assets to understand what are the critical assets and what are the non-critical assets. A pump on a key production line is different than a pump on a tertiary backup line. They may be the same pump, but they're completely different. You need a system that is able to distinguish this pump from that pump. Preventative maintenance on pump A is more important than preventative maintenance on pump B. Asset criticality is that ranking of assets, right? A couple examples. Apologies, I guess the projector cuts things off, so sorry. Worked with Alcoa. They did an asset criticality study. And one of the nice things about a company the size of Alcoa is they have 3 plants that were virtually identical. One of the plants, they implemented asset criticality and then measured the performance. You know, and I guess not surprisingly, the plant that had done a good job of asset criticality in time had profitability tens of millions of dollars better than the other plants. Right? It makes some sense, right? Focus on the important stuff. If you have to save money, let's save money on the unimportant things. You got that pump that's on the tertiary backup system, don't maintain it. If you can only do one thing, maintain the right pump. Asset criticality is something that will inform every decision you make through your process and through all of your activities in the organization. Right? Another example, not Alcoa, right? A mining company in Africa had an air handling system fail. People's lives are at risk, right? PM work on health and safety equipment is really important. Right? And now, you know, if your system isn't set up to make that easy to identify that important work, you have risk of missing it. Right? We're all human. You've got a million workers in the backlog. It's hard to get everything right. Okay, so what did Alcoa do with that one plant? It actually wasn't that sophisticated. They ranked their assets, gave it an asset score, basically 1 to 100, and ranked the assets from most important to least important. Did the same thing with their work orders, ranked their work orders 1 to 100, emergency work orders had one number, preventative work orders had another, break-in work, you know, they basically ranked work orders based on priority and some other factors, multiplied it together, created a priority index. That's it. Right? You can go crazy with asset criticality, but even basic systems get you where you need to be. Right? Your scheduling process should have that information front and center to you when you're picking what to work on and when. Yeah? I'll read this one for you too because it's a bit cut off. Genesis Solutions did a study with a transit company. And what they did is they helped them implement an asset criticality review. Went through all their assets, decided what was important and whatever. And then when they finished that, they stepped back and looked at the most important assets and found some surprising things. Of 8 of their most critical assets, 6 of them had no PMs identified. Right? So in other words, 6 of the most critical assets were under failure. Right? Yeah. And then worse, only 1 of the critical assets had spares available to it. Mm-hmm. It happens, right? It's easy, the maintenance is chaos, right? You have more things that happen every day coming at you from every different direction. And if you can't defend by looking at priority, you tend to just try and do everything. Nobody can do everything. Some things get dropped, right? This company, right, made some mistakes on these assets that happen to be critical assets. They didn't have an easy way to look at these assets after the fact and say, hey, these are critical, let's make sure I have the right spares. Right. Asset criticality avoids these things. Next thing I'll tell you from a scheduling process is preventative maintenance is a priority. You know, we all like in the maintenance world to put a cape on, fly in and solve a problem. Oh my God, the equipment's down, I stayed up all night and isn't it working and aren't I a hero, right? We have the hero complex. And the reality is a well-run plant has no people in capes flying around. It's a quiet place, things just run. Right? You don't have things don't happen in the middle of the night because you fix things before they break. Right? It's hard because from a cultural standpoint, we maintenance guys like to live that hero world. The challenge, of course, really hits you in scheduling. When you've got a bunch of work to do, you've got to find a way somehow to make sure your PMs are done. Right? You don't have to do all of them every day, but you've got to prioritize those PMs. And sometimes it means bringing in overtime, sometimes it means bringing in contractors. But a good scheduler finds a way to make sure the PMs on the critical assets get done, right? And sometimes it means something that's down stays down for a little while. These are trade-off decisions that we make every day. Don't always decide that the crisis is the most important thing. Yeah? Work order planning, I talked a little bit about that earlier, right? Having a well-planned work order is in fact important. You know, if you don't know how long something is going to take, there is no amount of planning and scheduling that will allow you to properly, you know, allocate the time you need. Right? If you don't know what parts you need for that work order, you know, you don't know what you're going to do. Right? If you don't know what parts you need, you may not have the parts, or maybe you have parts that you know you don't actually need. I worked with one customer who had their spares inventory growing by $1 million a year. Right? Why was that? Their work orders weren't well planned. They had parts that were called out that weren't necessary. They had shop rags like you can't believe. Right? So, you know, again, it takes time. Everybody's busy. Find the time, bring in more people, do whatever you got to do to better plan your work orders. Resource availability, right? Like you can't, if you don't know how long something's going to take, it's hard to plan and schedule. If you don't know who's available to do the work, it's also hard to plan and schedule. And availability is tricky, right? I'm sure you all use SAP. You've got SAP HR that talks about people and when they work, and you probably got some shift capabilities with some sort of rostering system. These are all good things, but the problem is sometimes they're on training, sometimes they're sick, sometimes they're doing other things. You can't necessarily rely on those systems to give you availability. A good planner and scheduler has a way to know that these people are available really to turn a wrench this day. Right? Building a good, reliable availability system is an essential part of planning and scheduling. Right? And it's not just people. Like, look at shared equipment, cranes. Right? A crane can't be two places at once. Right? And that's the kind of thing that you don't always notice when you're creating a schedule, because it looks like that, you know, you've got 24 hours of crane in a day, and you might have actually scheduled 2 jobs in the morning that need that crane. Right? Lastly is the asset in production use. You know, those production guys that are spending all those hundreds of millions of dollars I talked about earlier, well, they also use that equipment sometimes. Right? And believe me, if you go to lube something that's on a production run, they're sending you back home. Right? So does your scheduling system overlay production so that you know when you can do work and when you can't? Other considerations, right? What's the quote? All plans are wrong, some are useful, right? It is important to build a beautiful plan, but it's also important to recognize that it's maintenance, things break. They do break. And when they break, it's best to adapt when you have a process that's in control, right? If you know where people are, you know what they're doing, and you know who's working on important things, you know who's working on less important things, and you have a really well-controlled process, you can adapt to changes. When it's total chaos, that might be, the next bit might be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and we all just, you know, retire in the funny farm. Right? A process in control better handles interruptions. Right? It's a fact of life. Things break. Some other examples, right? IoT is a great way to create work orders. Right? Who here is interested or focusing on IoT right now? I know that we don't have IoT implemented, but is it on your agenda as an important thing? Absolutely, right? Lots of great IoT solutions out there. And at VIZIYA, what we're trying to do is help you automate that, right? Where if you have a customer, tell you about Potash, they have a bearing on a critical production piece of equipment that it starts to get warm, and they have about 24 hours. When the bearing starts to get warm, they get 24 hours before it completely fails. When it fails, production is down for 3 days. Right? And so they have sensors on that bearing. They have deployed OSI Soft Pi. You familiar with the system? Sorry, I'm in your way. And OSI Soft Pi is great. It identifies the situation, creates a failure condition, and warns you. Well, what does it do in the case of Potash? It sends an email to Joe. Well, what happens with Joe? Well, I go find somebody and we fix it. Right? That's their process. Because remember, the reliability guys and the maintenance guys don't talk to one another. When that bearing starts to get warm, you've got 24 hours, and you're about to lose production time. You don't need humans in that process. You need an automated system to say, bearing's hot, generate a work order, get it fixed. If 6 hours later you get another note that the bearing's still hot, generate an emergency work order, right? Prioritize these things. If you can automate the obvious decisions, it gives the maintenance planners and schedulers time to work on the things that aren't so obvious. A little bit on PwC, did a really nice predictive maintenance plan. and look at what they said the most important thing to do for beginning a predictive maintenance thing. Probably hard to read, sorry. Do asset criticality. Right? The reality is, predictive maintenance is hard to do, right? There's a lot of value, but it's hard to do. If you had to do predictive maintenance studies on every one of your assets, you'd never finish. It's good, I guess it would keep us all employed, but the right answer is find the high priority assets and do predictive maintenance studies on those. All right. Predictive maintenance can reduce the time required to plan maintenance 20 to 50%, increase uptime 10 to 20%, and reduce overall maintenance cost by 5 to 10%. Deloitte study. You know, if you do $1 billion in maintenance, you know, you're talking a lot of money here. 5 to 10% cost savings. Right? Availability by 10 to 20%. That's lower production costs as well. The benefits are enormous. Sorry, did you get that? I saw, okay. Here's another thing, I'm a marketing guy. I study Google AdWords. Look at the, you know, from 2008 to 2017, this is Google trend data on the term predictive maintenance. Who here is focused on trying to improve their predictive maintenance? Yeah, it's the in thing, right? And it's because there's a lot of value. We see a lot of customers and a lot of people working on it. Nonetheless, although it's interesting to people, got another study from the McDonald Group who are, you know, asking people when you do a work order, what is the source of that work order? Well, they claim that 6 out of 100 work orders are done when something breaks. I don't believe that. I think a lot more places are break fix than people are prepared to admit. But if you ignore that for a minute, 35 and 27, right, 62% of them are basically scheduled maintenance based on manufacturer recommended times and based on, you know, number of operations. You know, this arm is moved 100 times, you got to lube it. Right? 3 out of the 100 people generate work orders based on sensors and instrumentation. Right? 29 out of the 100, and again that feels a little high to me, claim they do predictive maintenance and create work orders based on the predictive maintenance. You know, whether it's 29% or 10%, doesn't matter. The message is 62% of people generate work orders based on just routine numbers, not based on true predictive technology. And it's probably more than that. The bulk of them are break fix. I think the number of actually do predictive is even smaller. Last comment, digitalization. You heard the term digitalization? For a while there, my phone was ringing and every customer I had was saying, what are your plans for digitalization? And it's one of those words that it doesn't mean anything, so I'll talk a little bit about what I think it means. Right? Digitalization means you have all kinds of great technology. You have great software, you have good people, you've got, you know, mobile devices, you've got IoT. It isn't, you know, some customers will say to me, it isn't really a matter of software anymore. It's a matter of building an end-to-end process that uses all this software to give you the benefits that you want. So what digitalization means to me is building a true end-to-end process based on your requirements that leverages the software you have. So in other words, you don't need software vendors like me to sell you products that are point solutions, but you need software vendors who work with your underlying system and build solutions for you with your consulting teams like Vesta and get you 100% of the way from an end-to-end process. That's what digitalization means. Right? And the benefits are enormous. Right? And every VP at every company I talk to, they feel frustrated that they've spent so much money on deploying software and solutions, but they don't see that they're being widely adopted. You know, simple questions like, if I have a bearing that, you know, generates, you know, a message, what happens? Well, it generates an email. Like, you know, that's just the worst answer, right? And then we find a maintenance guy, but I don't even know who the maintenance team is. I got to go meet them and then, you know, request the work being done. Digitalization really is the end-to-end integration of your teams and your processes and your people. At VIZIYA, we believe in digitalization, right? And so we try to see the maintenance world as a holistic, and I realize it's a bit of an eye chart, so apologies. The maintenance world is a holistic chart of things. It's assets and people. You've got some form of historian collecting IoT data. You've got SAP with a good system that tracks all your maintenance work orders and does all the things it does. And then surrounding that, you need the ability to create a budget. You need the ability to, you know, if you fix something that's under warranty, you know, let's get our money back from the vendor. Right? You got a mobile solution and you need to schedule it. And then when it's all said and done, you have to report on how it's doing. Right? Our view and this is why we have these products, is these are the things that we think are necessary to fill the gaps to give you a nice end-to-end digitalization strategy. No presentation is complete without an Edwards Deming quote, right? If you can't describe what you're doing as a process, then you don't know what you're doing, right? I think that man, all he did was generate quotes. But he's right. Okay, it's all about the asset, right? A good asset management strategy digitalizes what you do, focused on your assets, and evolves with you. It's impossible to do things all at once. How do you do it, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? Work step at a time. Thank you. Any questions?